From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I'm Carla Gonzalez, and this is From the South. The number of confirmed cases of pneumonia caused by the novel coronavirus in China has risen to 7,736, with at least 75 cases confirmed outside of the Asian giant. As of now, the death toll from the virus stands at 170, while 124 patients have been officially discharged from hospitals after recovering from the infection. Prevention measures remain in full effect as the streets of major cities have become virtually deserted. On Wednesday, the Director General of the World Health Organization said that China deserves the international community's gratitude for implementing the appropriate measures to contain the spread of the outbreak. Less than 1% of all cases have been reported abroad.
The level of commitment from China is incredible. Some people on social media, I will be open with you, were criticized for praising China. I will praise China again and again because its actions actually helped in reducing the spread of coronavirus to other countries.
WHO, but the whole world needs to be on alert now. The whole world needs to take action and be ready for any cases that come, either from the original epicenter or from other epicenters that become established.
Meanwhile, 2 new emergency hospitals being built in the city of Wuhan will soon be finished. Both hospitals will be fully dedicated to the treatment of patients infected with the coronavirus, with capacity for over 3,000 beds. Authorities announced the construction of the first building on January 24th, and it is expected to be fully operational by February 3rd. The president of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro, has said he is willing to restore consular relations with the Colombian government. This comes after Venezuelan authorities apprehended former Senator Aida Merlano, who escaped from a Colombian prison last year.
Yo estoy dispuesto.
I am willing to restore relations at the consular level with the Colombian government so that all these issues can be carried out through the appropriate channels. Ivan Duque, enough of such folly, enough of this ideological fanatism, enough of your political extremism. Put your feet on the ground and let's be pragmatic.
On Wednesday, Bolivia's Attorney General suspended the hearings of the statements by Luis Arce, the presidential candidate of the movement towards socialism, as there were a number of procedural errors committed by officials. We have more in this report.
Movement Towards Socialism candidate Luis Arce was accompanied by supporters on his way to the prosecutor's office, where just 10 days ago, a judicial process was taken up, which had first been initiated 4 years ago.
Yesterday he was summoned, and since yesterday he was considered accused, and as of yesterday he was the right to revise the corresponding documentation.
The Attorney General took into account that Luis Arce was not made aware of the accusations being brought against him, nor the evidence. This resulted in the suspension of the hearing until the accused and his defense are properly informed on the legal proceedings.
Myself and the team of lawyers have not had access to legal documentation to know exactly what I'm being accused of. What is the alleged crime that I have committed? In this investigation, there are more than 40 bodies that I should know about, more than 70 annexes that I should know about. I was happily accompanied by people from the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights.
Arce said that the legal process in which he's accused was only pursued once he was formally nominated as candidate of the movement towards socialism. And he says that it's part of the political and judicial persecution carried out by the de facto government.
I have come to testify because I have nothing to hide. I am not corrupt. I am not a thief.
Since the time that the movement towards socialism candidate arrived in La Paz on Tuesday, he's received an outpour of solidarity from supporters and members of the party, a party which has become the largest in Bolivia over the course of the last 14 years.
We have come to support our president, who is going to be our fighter. He won't leave us. He is going to fight for the women, and he is going to fight until the end.
We have come to see our president, who are we going to elect in May. That are we going to elect him as a president, Luis Arce Catacora and David Choquehuanca.
Freedoms are being restricted in Bolivia since the coup government has taken office. Unfortunately, the union leaders and also the leaders of the movement towards socialism are being unjustly persecuted.
Leaders of the movement towards socialism have been subjected to judicial persecution since the November 10th coup. With the May 3rd elections just around the corner, they're confident that they have the support to win the presidency and to return the country's democracy and institutions back to normal.
In Chile, the prosecutor's office has charged police officer Carlos Martínez Ocares with the murder of Colo-Colo football fan Jorge Mora. The officer allegedly ran over 37-year-old Mora with his car after a football match on Tuesday night. Relatives of the victim say he was deliberately targeted by the police, who then prevented him from receiving medical treatment. And a vigil for Jorge Mora ended with police repression and 2 subway stations being set alight. Police intervened to try to disperse the vigil, and some protesters responded by setting fire to a metro station and to a police armored car. Our correspondent in Santiago, Alejandro Kirk, has more.
Yes, this is the exact place where last night a soccer fan was rolled over by a truck, a police truck to transport horses. According to the videos that we have seen, the incident was totally uncalled for. The truck went over at high speed against demonstrators. Actually, there were no demonstrators. They were coming out of a soccer game between this club, Colo-Colo, the most popular club in Chile, against the Palestinian club, the Palestinian Community Club, part of the professional league here in Chile. They were coming out and they were attacked by the police with tear gas, with water, the usual thing. But then this truck came from nowhere and rolled over the people and killed this man. His name is Jorge Mora, and he was actually he died a few minutes later at the hospital. The people made a makeshift memorial here to remember this guy who is going to be buried tomorrow or the day after, on Friday. What did the police do today? There was a fire here. There was actually another place, a commercial place, was burned. But what did the police do? They came over and destroyed the memorial, which is what they always do. They did the same thing with Mauricio Fredes, another, this time a demonstrator who died escaping from the water cannon at Plaza Dignidad, the former Plaza Italia, called now Dignity Square. So in other places of this city, not far away from here, metro stations are being burned. There are riots all over the place because this is a very, the followers of Colo-Colo, you can count by the millions, and there is rage amongst them, and they are promising that there will be no more soccer games until the person who did this gets to jail. But the judiciary did the opposite. A judge considered that the guilty, those who were guilty were the soccer fans. She says that they were usually outlaws, that they were under the influence of alcohol, and he set the policeman free. So there is more riots, there is more violence to come because of this decision by this judge and because of this killing, which was totally, I repeat, uncalled for, and it's part of the wave of repression that Chile is living since October 18th.
That was Alejandro Kirk from Chile. And coming up, the Mexican activist known as the monarch butterfly's protector is found dead. Don't go away.
Innovation, science, the technological breakthrough, and its influence in society.
Viajeros del saber, el futuro está aquí.
Atomen. Monday, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. Mexican authorities have found the body of Homero Gomez Gonzalez, an environmental activist and protector of North America's premier monarch butterfly habitat. The body of the 50-year-old manager of Rosario's butterfly sanctuary was found near the municipality of Ocampo in Michoacán 2 weeks after he disappeared. Authorities are yet to give any official details about his murder, but human rights organizations point at illegal loggers with whom Gomez Gonzalez had frequently clashed over the forest where his sanctuary is located. Mexico has deported scores of Central American migrants who were arrested after they forced their way through a police blockade and headed for the United States. Around 500 men, women and children who were part of a caravan of roughly 5,000 scrambled over a rusted metal fence and surged into a concrete riverbed towards San Diego on Sunday. Mexican authorities confirmed the 98 arrests on the countryside, saying there were instigators in the migrant caravan pushing people to illegally cross the border.
It was the first time I made the journey. Now I'm asking people to not to try it, because the situation with crossing the Mexican border is tough. I ask mothers to not take their children, because it's tough to see a child on the journey under the burning sun.
And a new migrant caravan will set off from El Salvador with close to 8,000 people trying to reach the United States. It is expected that the caravan will arrive to Mexico's southern border by this weekend. Activists and human rights defenders say that Mexico's strategy to stop migration flows violates human rights. Argentina's lower house has approved a bill that will allow the government to negotiate the restructuring of the public debt. With 224 votes in favor and 2 against, the bill grants the government broad powers to seek the restructuring of about $195 billion of the country's $311 billion in public debt. The legislation will now go to the Senate. The International Monetary Fund, which lended about $44 billion to Argentina, said it will send a delegation to Buenos Aires in February to discuss the matter. Victims of Colombia's armed conflict are demanding representation in parliament, despite opposition from the ruling party. They say the president must uphold the mandates of the 2016 peace agreements.
2 years ago, the approval for the victims of the armed conflicts to have representation in Congress was denied, in spite of the peace agreement signed in Havana, Cuba. Officials said it could not be approved due to a lack of votes. In 2020, opposition lawmakers are once again demanding that right for the 16 victims of the most conflict-ridden areas in Colombia.
It was unfair for them to revoke the decision because there were no votes, and it should be sent to the president so the law can be passed as soon as possible. The Electoral Council must also announce the date for elections within the constitutional timeline so that the 16 victims can have a seat at the House of Representatives.
Both peace promoters and lawmakers agreed there is no legal impediment to prevent President Ivan Duque from signing this law. However, his political party, the Democratic Center, has been opposed to its implementation, with some ensuring that they remain close to Duque to make certain that the agreement does not come to fruition.
Esperemos que no.
We hope there is no opposition, but we know it's been tradition for the governing party and its allies who are helping to rule to criticize the deal, and we expect that they will put forward any measures to prevent the law. But the most important thing is that we believe it will happen and that it must be followed through for the well-being of the nation, of democracy, and to encourage reconciliation and coexistence.
The National Victims Organization has expressed concern that they are not safe under this government, as it constantly opposes the application of the peace agreements. The organization also strongly rejects reform proposals that have been put forward by political parties and the armed forces.
Based on the government's proposals, only political parties will have representations, while the victims will stay on the sidelines. But it was agreed to in Havana that there will be 16 representatives from the areas where the armed conflict was the most severe. To leave out the victims is totally absurd, and it's totally inconceivable. That is not what was discussed and agreed to in Havana.
It is expected that President Duque will sign the deal without objection or adding reforms that will go against the agreements, bearing in mind that his legislation has already been approved.
In other news, former Ivory Coast Prime Minister Guillaume Soro has announced his intentions to run for president in the next elections. Soro, who is living in exile in France after a falling out with the current government on allegations of treason, said he will return to his country. Soro was Prime Minister from 2007 to 2012. He later became President of the National Assembly and quit in 2019.
I am a candidate for the presidency of the Republic of Ivory Coast, first of all because I love my country. And after all these years in government, in the National Assembly, I think I can better serve my country.
The National Union of Metal Workers of South Africa has appealed to the government to come to the aid of struggling electronics manufacturers in the Eastern Cape province. The union says failure by the government will not only affect the workers and their families, but will have an impact on the entire economy of the region. The company was launched in 2018 as part of efforts to improve one of the country's economically disadvantaged regions. It is now facing liquidation after it failed to repay a $20 million loan obtained from a local bank. Residents from Zimbabwe's second-largest city face serious water shortages as local dams are running dry. Due to ongoing droughts in the past few years, water sources around Bulawayo have dried up, and residents have been forced to use water from unsafe sources. They are calling on the government to declare the situation a national disaster. Zimbabwe has been one of the most drought-affected nations in Southern Africa due to climate change. After this break, the European Union accepts Britain's Brexit plan. Stay with us.
A review of the world news that investigates, incites analysis, and induces criticism, because every event has a context.
Pusimos el punto en la I.
Dotting the I. Saturdays, only on Telesur.
为了保持身体健康，我冥想。
Para mantenerme saludable, yo corro.
To keep myself healthy, I study.
Για να διατηρηθώ υγιής, τρέφομαι σωστά.
Para mantenerme saludable, yo bailo.
Para mantenerme saludable, yo purifico mi espíritu a través del cuerpo. ¿Y tú?
Get Your Body. Tuesdays, only on Telesur.
Thank you for joining us again. Palestine's ambassador to the United Nations, Riyad Mansour, has announced that President Mahmoud Abbas will request the UN Security Council pass a resolution to condemn US President Donald Trump's peace plan.
These consultations will be culminated in a visit by President Abbas within the next 2 weeks to the Security Council, in which he will put before the entire international community the reaction of the Palestinian people and the Palestinian leadership against this onslaught against the national rights of the Palestinian people by the Trump administration. And we will also be consulting with everyone to hopefully by that time we will have agreement on a text that the Security Council will vote on it.
A group of people protested outside the United Arab Emirates Embassy in Sudan against the alleged trafficking of local men who have been recruited to join the militias of Libyan General Khalifa Haftar. Demonstrators are accused in a company from the UAE of being involved in the scheme. The United Nations revealed that cargo and freight company Black Shield was colluding with a Sudanese general to recruit poor young men, offering them jobs as security guards in the Middle East. Meanwhile, Haftar's so-called Libyan National Army is preparing to launch a major offensive against forces loyal to the United Nations recognized government of National Accord. LNA field commanders say they are waiting for senior officials to give the order for forces to advance towards the west, to take over towns currently under the control of the GNA. On Sunday, the GNA accused Haftar of violating the ceasefire signed in Moscow 2 weeks ago.
We are awaiting the instructions of the General Command so we can approach this corrupt group of Syrians who deal with artillery, Grad artillery. We are monitoring them and know their locations and how they move and work. Mercenaries from the Chadian Justice and Equality movement are also fighting alongside them, but we, God willing, we monitor all their movements, and very soon any orders or instructions issued by the General Command, they will be eliminated as soon as possible, God willing.
A ship carrying some 400 migrants that was rescued off the coast of Libya has finally been allowed to dock in the Italian port of Taranto. The migrants, including pregnant women and babies, were stranded on the Mediterranean Sea for more than 4 days as they waited for Italian authorities to grant the ship authorization to dock. On Monday, the United Nations said the war in Libya is forcing more migrants to take the risky journey across the Mediterranean Sea. 1,283 migrants died last year while attempting to make this journey. The European Parliament has approved the Brexit deal with London ahead of Britain's departure from the European Union on January 31st. The transition will see Prime Minister Boris Johnson's government try to negotiate until the end of the year an ambitious free trade agreement with his 27 former partners in the bloc. Talks will include fishing rights, residency and working rights for citizens, tariff-free trade, access to Europe for Britain's large services sector, among other matters. Britain and Europe will apply EU rules on trade and free movement of citizens until the end of the year.
Oh, shocking. We are from different parties but the same region, you know, and our future is in Europe. As I said earlier, this scarf says unity in diversity, and I'm not sure that my country now is unified around diversity where Europe still is together, which is what we don't have, unfortunately, in our own country, you know, and our political system is broken.
Should old acquaintance be forgot for old lang syne?
Whose idea was that?
There are many great minds in this parliament. It came from different directions.
And the message was?
Well, of course, the message is that, first of all, we will always be friends. We have to be friends. We are all Europeans. The European Union will not go away for the Brits, regardless of their Brexit. And the life goes on. There are many good messages.
With that, we end our news brief. But remember, you can find all of our stories by checking our website, telesurenglish.net. And you can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Carla Gonzalez. Thank you for watching.